Welcome back to Nature Labs. If you're wondering what to look for in this New Brunswick election, let me draw you to a question someone asked during our coverage of the BC election. They were wondering what the impact of the Green vote was on the NDP vote, or in other words, was the left vote being split between the two parties? Well, the answer in BC was a bit more nuanced because the Green Party vote is quite concentrated on Vancouver Island, meaning that while it's a factor across the province, it's mostly centered in an area where they can pick up seats, meaning it didn't really impact the overall NDP numbers, with an exception of a couple of ridings. New Brunswick is a bit of the opposite case. The Green Party vote here is a bit more diluted across the province of New Brunswick, which means it could have a bigger impact in terms of splitting the vote on the left side of the ledger between the Liberals and the Greens, potentially offering up an opportunity for the progressive Conservatives to come up the middle and take more ridings, even though overall their poll numbers are lower than they were in the last election. Part of that is the current incumbent Premier, Blaine Higgs. He's had some controversies, and he's certainly considered to be more of a conservative than a progressive conservative in at least the old way that we referred to that party, and is considered to be basically a big hope for real conservative principles in Canada. So we'll see how that plays out, how his personality, whether that's an asset, whether that's negative, and whether the Green vote actually splits the vote, the Liberals, in enough ridings to give Blaine Higgs a chance at his third term in government. For the Liberals, of course, they're running against, in many ways, not Higgs, but Justin Trudeau. We've talked about it in the last video, that the unpopularity of the Liberal Party federally does kind of trickle down and impact provincial politics, especially in places like New Brunswick. When you've got often a political climate that is focused on change, even if it's a different party and a different leader, in this case Susan Holt, it's still, people associate that Liberal brand with the Liberal Prime Minister that's currently in office, and that could be a drag on the Liberal numbers as well. But the other part to look at in this election, and you see the map of New Brunswick here on CBC's website, is the role of the urban versus the rural vote. And just as was the case in BC, you've probably heard, if you are in New Brunswick, a lot of the talking heads referring to the fact that rural constituencies, rural ridings in New Brunswick are almost exclusively going to be going to the progressive Conservatives, where it's the urban centers where the fight really will be for power in this election. That's the same thing that happened out in BC, and it's the same concerning trend we're seeing across the country, where not only are ideologies hardening between a harder right and a harder left, we're also seeing a divide between urban voters and rural voters. That's not good for democracy, that's not good for Canada, and tonight I'm really looking to see if this map reflects what we saw in British Columbia, which is a real stark divide between urban and rural voters and urban left-wing and right-wing voters in the same context.